Everyone, welcome back to Body Haven Soaps. My name is Darlene. I am the owner and creator of Body Haven Soaps, and the whole goal of this channel is to help fellow creators create. Now, this is the beginning of a series of herbal extractions. There is going to be 8 videos to this series. The reason that I've decided to do this series is because I probably get 100 questions a week on herbal extractions through my Patreons. A lot of my formulas, whether it be oils that I add into the product are herbal extracted, or it's the water that's herbal, has herbal extractions into it. And a lot of people don't have all of the knowledge on how to do these extractions and how to do them properly, why we would use water instead of oil, or an alcohol extraction or a glyceride extraction for certain herbs and certain products. So to clarify it all, I figured it was easier just to do a video series so people could watch, learn, understand, and then when they go to use my formulas, they have a clear understanding based on knowledge of how to do these extractions and how to do them properly. So that's going to be the series. Like I said, it is going to be 8 videos in total. We will have today's video, which is just basically what is an extraction and why we use extractions in skincare products. And then we are going to go over oil extractions. We are going to talk about, the next video will be about oil extractions, and we will go over hot and cold process methods and the difference between the two. We are going to go over water extractions and the different methods we could use to do a water extraction. We are going to go over an alcohol-based extraction and why we would use that and the different alcohols that we could use. We are going to go over a glyceride extraction, okay, to make a glyceride and why we would use that. And we also will go over making our own hydrosols to make a distillate extraction. And we will go over 2 methods of doing that, depending on the equipment that you have available to you. And then we will go over, obviously, doing a dual extraction, so using 2 different types of extraction methods to make one product, because that is an understanding why we would do that. And we will go over, the final video will be on preserving our extractions and stabilizing them for shelf life. So that should cover the basics of the 5 different types of base extractions we can do, the reasonings behind doing those extractions, how we can use 2 different extractions, and also preserving in shelf life. Okay, this video is knowledge only. Do your research, make sure you follow along with what your guidelines are in your country or what your regulations are. But this is the stuff that I do. So if this is something that interests you, feel free to subscribe. That way you're notified when the next video comes up. And also, if you don't mind giving me a like to help support my channel, I would greatly appreciate that. So let's get into the video. All right, so the basics of this video today, there's going to be no demonstrations in this video today, simply because we're just going to understand the basics. And then the next video will break down throughout the rest of the videos the process of each type of extraction using the 5 different bases, okay? So first off, what is a herbal extraction? A herbal extraction is the process of drawing or pulling out active beneficial nutrients out of plant matter into a medium that is usable into skin product rather than using a whole herb. Now, I mean, it's pretty hard to use a whole herb in a lotion, right? Because now you've got all those particles and stuff that aren't going to absorb, aren't going to go in, it just doesn't work, right? So we would use the extracted nutrients out of that into a liquid extraction we can put into that product. So there's the purpose of an extraction. So why use an extract in our skin products? Okay, so when we go to use a skin product, we could just make a lotion with distilled water, not a problem. That does make a great moisturizing lotion. There's no denying that. We're using the oils and butters and we're creating that hydrating purpose. But could we add more to that lotion so that it helps regenerate the skin? Those types of things. Now, I mean, you guys have to do your research and understand your herbs, and obviously we can't do an extraction like a big processing plant because we don't have all of those the equipment that they do. And we may not get the same strength as, say, the store-bought stuff. Fair enough, not in denial here. Okay? I'm not saying it is a replacement, but it is an alternative to make your own. So I do make a lot of my own extracts. If you've watched my previous videos, I definitely love using herbs, clays, things like that in my products. And I like to do it fresh because when I get them from a factory, okay, fair enough, they're still good, they're still shelf stable, they're professionally and they're tested and everything else. So we can guarantee when we use store-bought stuff that there is a certain percentage of active ingredients that have been brought from the plant. Now, when we do make our own, keep in mind, unless you are sending it for testing and everything else, do not put on your labeling that you can guarantee this amount of percentage without it being tested. But we can still introduce a good quality product without having to pay the higher prices. And that's why I do it. Do I buy some store-bought stuff? 100% I do. It really just depends because I try to use more natural products. So really at the end of the day, it just depends on, for me, the shelf, how they made it shelf stable and they preserved it. So if they've used a preservative I don't use in my company, then I'm not buying that product. So that's the reason I got into herbal extractions, was because it was very hard to find stuff that use the preservatives that I wanted to use. Now, if I'm going to sell it, I do have to preserve it, but if I do it myself, I have the ability to put the preservative I want in it. Second of all, if you got to buy a lot of different individual infusions to make one product, if you want to put 5 or 6 herbs in it, it really opens up the creativity of the herb blends and things like that that I can do in my products. So that's the reason that I did it. Now, I mean, obviously there is very depending on the herb and the process you use can determine what type of properties you are getting out of that plant matter. Some parts of the plant matter are water soluble, some plant are oil soluble. So if I do an oil extraction, I will only get the oil soluble properties out of that plant matter. If I do a water extraction, I will only get the water extraction properties out of that plant matter. So that's where sometimes we will do both types of extractions, which we'll go through in the videos, so that we can get both the water and oil soluble, bringing up the properties within the product that we're making. Okay, so there's a lot of things like antioxidants, flavonoids. We also have essential oils, vitamins, and minerals and stuff that comes out of that plant matter into that medium, and we then introduce that into our product. Okay, so we can make blends of herbs, whatever our little heart desires, as long as we're staying within our guidelines of health and safety, to bring different properties and be creative. And I mean, the whole reason I run my business and do the things I do is because I love to be creative. So doing the herbal extractions, being able to make my own blends and bring my own properties, it's something I really enjoy. And maybe that's not for everyone. And maybe it's easier for you just to be able to purchase it from a manufacturer, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Like I said, the only reason that I began doing my own herbal extractions because I didn't like some of the preservatives they were using to make that shelf stable. Okay, and then I realized all my creativity juices started flowing when I started doing my own, and it's a world of its own. I make all kinds of things, and some things I won't sell. Family members will have a skin issue, and I will do testing and testing and testing and try and help them out, right? But it may not be a product I ever produce and sell. It may be something I just use for family and friends. So absolutely, that's options as well for people, okay? So the reasons we want to use herbal extractions in skincare is obviously we get the concentration of the extracts to deliver that potency within the product. Like I said, a lotion can be made just with distilled water, or I can make a herbal extraction into that water and use that water to make my lotion. Or I can do a herbal extraction into a water, and I can do a herbal extraction into the oil, and I can use both of those to make that lotion, bringing up the nutrient dense properties of that lotion or cream or balm or whatever it happens to be that we're making. Okay, obviously ease of using the product. So if I'm going to use herbs, obviously if I put whole plant matter into a lotion, that doesn't work, and really there's very little skin properties in that because it doesn't absorb into the skin. So we want to do the extraction because it's easier to use a herbal extraction to add benefits to our product. And once again, the customization, you guys can come up with different blends, test, and go through and find things that work. I have some amazing products that people absolutely love, and it did take me a long time to come up with those infusions and how to make them work, but they are amazing products now, and people absolutely love them, and I've had some really good outcomes with some stuff. Other stuff, wasn't that happy with, so we moved on and tried a different thing, right? So it's the customization and your ability to test and experience and have that creative input behind your product, okay? So we have 5 main types of infusions that we do. So obviously the most common one that we do is going to be a oil infusion. I have done a video in the past on oil infusions. I don't know if I have one that's specifically just on oil or if it is a multi-dual infusion that I did, because, I mean, if you watch the video, you'll understand, and I will have a video on the multiple infusions so you guys have a clear understanding of that. But we have the oil infusion. So it is basically just an oil. You want to use an oil that has a good shelf life. You know, you could do it into any oil you want. If I'm doing an oil infusion, I tend to use olive oil, jojoba oil, grapeseed oil. You can use whatever oil you want according to the product you're trying to make. It just has to be able to infuse those herbal properties into the oil molecules. So as long as it's an oil or butter, you could absolutely use it. Okay, so basically we're just soaking herbs into an oil to allow the molecules to penetrate into the oil, and an oil extraction will only extract the oil soluble properties of that plant matter. Okay, but it helps with the fat soluble compounds. Okay, it's great for using for soothing, healing oils, balms, things like that. I have a few different herbal extractions I do for foot balm, for different things like that, for eczema cream, different things, but I will do an oil extraction for that because I want those oil soluble properties. Okay, we also have our water extracts. Now, using basically a water extraction is using hot water to extract the water soluble properties out of that plant matter and be able to use it. Most of my water soluble extractions are used in lotions. But you could use this in a facial mist. You could use it in a rinse, compress, toners, different things like that. So a water extraction would be used for those. But remember, it will only extract the water-soluble properties of that plant matter. Now we have our alcohol extractions, which are most commonly called tinctures. And that is using an alcohol base. And there's different types of alcohol that you can use. Lots of people will, what is that one called? Everclear is one a lot of people will use. It's a higher proof. You could use simple vodka though, guys. It's just going to be a lower proof, and it's going to take a little bit longer for those to come out. But the great thing about an alcohol tincture is that it extracts both water and oil solubles to a point, because even if I was using a high proof alcohol, alcohol will start to break down the fatty acid properties within that herbal plant matter, but it does contain water, which also helps break down the water soluble. So you kind of get a double thing going on with our alcohols, okay? So as both water and fat soluble compounds are extracted, not as much as if you were doing an oil and water, but it is a combination extraction, okay? Now another great thing about the alcohol is it works as a preservative. So with an alcohol tincture, we don't have to put a preservative in there because the alcohol is the preservative, depending on the water content you have. So if you are using vodka, well, it's got quite a high water content. I would still be using a preservative. If you're using something like an ethanol, a food grade ethanol, well, now I'm not going to have to use a preservative in there. So it really just depends, but we will dive deeper into that when we get to that video. All right, and then we have our glycerites, and our glycerites extraction is a glycerin extraction. So we're using glycerin and distilled water to do the extraction. Once again, it will extract both fat soluble and water soluble components and nutrients out of that plant matter. So it has some benefits there. Most commonly used in serums and facial gels and different things like that. But glycerites, it does kind of have that dual thing going on. Once again, not as strong as if you're doing one or the other. And glycerin is usable in just about any product. Okay, there's obviously some exceptions there. And then we have our hydrosols. Now our hydrosols is where we have a distillation of those herbal properties through using a distillation process. Now you can make a DIY distillation process, and we will go over that in the video. I actually have I don't know if you guys can see that, but it is a water distillator. And I just bought this off of Amazon. It works great. You simply will take, and we will go over this in, I'll go through running it in that video. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to take the inside of this stainless steel, and I would make sure that you get stainless steel. There is some different materials out there. I choose not to have, you know, the non-stick coating, all of those types of things. Stainless steel is the best, guys. I will link this in the description box below if you guys want to check it out. But basically you just put your distilled water in here. It is being distilled, so you don't have to use distilled water. But I use distilled water so I don't get all of that hard water corrosion and stuff, and I keep my thing clean. But anyways, you just throw your water in here, you throw your herbs in there, you put the lid on, and you let the machine run. It does run for a number of hours. There's a little container that goes underneath the little drip spout here, and through the distillation process where the steam comes up and then it's cooled and then it drips into your little basin that you're going to catch it in, we can make our own hydrosols and distillates using this. But there is a DIY method. You don't have to go out and buy this. This just works really well for me. Like I said, I'm not sponsored by this company or anything like that. I'm just showing you what I use, okay? So this is a great option as well, and they're not really that expensive. I think I paid $130 for that. But I already have all of my herbs, as you guys can see on the back shelf. And how much does a jug of distilled water cost? Not a whole lot. So I find it more cost effective than buying my own hydrosols and stuff. But if you're not using a lot of hydrosols, it may not be cost effective to you. So that's an individual basis. But those types of extractions are great. It's more of an aromatic water, basically steam distillation of herbs, okay, commonly used in facial sprays, refreshing mists, misting astringents. So those are common things that you may use that in. What's an example? Like a rose hydrosol people spray on their face and stuff is a very common product that you see in all these big fancy stores, and things like that, okay? So those are the 5 main ways we extract. So we can do it through oil, we can do it through water, we can do it through alcohol, we can do it through glycerin, and we can do it through distillation. So those are the 5 main extraction methods. Each of them have their own reasoning and their own purpose behind them, which we will go through in an individual video on each of those extraction methods, okay? So in this series, what you guys can expect going forward is step-by-step methods of how to do each one of these extraction methods, okay? Tips on choosing the right herbs for the right extraction methods, such as, you know, if I'm going to do flowers and leaves, well, that's to do that into an oil extraction, that works well. If I'm going to use a bark or a root, well, herbal extraction doesn't work the best to get the most amount of nutrients out of that. So I may do a dual extraction, or I may just do a water extraction, depending on what it is that I'm trying to do. We are going to go over how to use these extractions into different formulas, and we are also going to go over preserving them and making them shelf stable. And if you don't use a preservative, how to store them, how long their shelf life is, different things like that. So that's what you guys can expect in the series. A couple quick tips when you want to do herbal extractions. Make sure you're using high quality herbs. The better quality the herb, the better quality your extraction. Always make sure all of your stuff is sanitary and sterilized to help with stabilizing shelf life and safety of your product, okay? Label your extracts. I can't tell you how many times, guys, I've started an infusion. I was like, oh, I'll write a label for that later. And then I got 3 or 4 going. I'm like, which is which? And, you know, and sometimes that's a waste, because if I don't know what it is, I really can't label it, use it, or anything else. Make sure you're labeling each of your infusions and making sure you're keeping track of what's what, okay? Because that's a mistake that I've made and wasted a lot of stuff. So that's just a quick tip for you guys. And then once you've made that extraction or in the process of making it, it's really important that we keep plant extracts in a dark, cool location. So if you have a dark, cool location to store them in, you will extend shelf life. Put them into a dark amber container if you are going to be selling them, because they do break down with the UV rays and they become less effective. So just a couple quick tips there. All right, so the next video that I'm going to do, you guys, is going to be on the oil extractions, hot and cold extractions, a detailed information, and it will be not a dual extraction, just a single extraction, and we will go through that, okay? If you guys don't mind, let me know down below in the comment section what types of herbs would you like to see extracted, those types of things. Is there any formulas that you're specifically looking for, so that I can try and provide you guys with the most useful information I can. All right. And then, is there a specific skincare concern that you are looking to address that I may be able to help with a formulation or provide information on how to formulate something for that skin issue? If you leave it in the comment box below, I will try to roll that into the videos or some videos afterwards, and I can hopefully help you out with that. Okay, so that's the basics of herbal extractions, and we are going to do a deep dive into each herbal extraction, so please feel free to subscribe so you see the next video. If this is the type of content you like and you enjoy my videos, if you can give me a like to help support my channel, I would greatly appreciate that. As far as my Patreons go, if you guys go over to Patreon now, you will see that there is PDFs there for you with the best herbs and how to extract them, so you guys can be prepared for the next video. I do have also in that PDF 5 herb blends for different skin issues that you guys can look and do some research with or use, because they are ones that I have tried. And then there is a list of 50 herbs with their skin properties, what they bring, and the extraction method for each of those. So if you are a Patreon, go over there and get your copy of that, so that you guys can kind of have a guideline and start building that if this is something that interests you. All right, I hope that today was a little bit informative. We are going to do the deep dives, guys, and get into these oil extractions. I just needed to get the basics out of the way. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please feel free to put any questions below, and I will do my best to bring those into my videos or answer them directly. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.